Yeah.
The other one was too high. It was right in your face.
Link to this if they wanted?
Tiny.cc. I usually bring a sign. Tiny.cc/GZL. Let me just make the announcement.
Tiny.cc
/GZL.
/GCL?
GZ capital. I'll give it to you in a moment. Good evening for all those who have joined us on Zoom. My name is Akiva Balter, and on behalf of the family, thank you for joining us this evening.
Can we ask, please,
About to start, I'm
everybody
going to
to
ask
sit
everybody
down
on
so we'll be
Zoom
able
to
to
please
start.
rename themselves with their actual name as well as the location where they're logging in from. Again, anybody who's on Zoom, please change your name to a real name and where you're from. Thank you.
Reshus Harabonim,
family, we gather tonight for the Siyum Shloshim for our Rav Mora D'Asre, who served us for over 60 years. Harav Schochet, together with the Rebbetzin, so sein gesund leirich yomim v'shonim teves, was sent by the Rebbe in Tovshin Yud Zayin, 1957, to serve the community with spreading Yiddishkeit, establishing a yeshiva, establishing a large Talmud Torah in the community of Lubavitch. I'm not going to go through the history. I can just say, I heard it from him and from the Rebbetzin, that in those years, for a young couple, right after the wedding, actually Rabbi Schochet was here even before the wedding, they had the schuz that the Rebbe was Mesader Kedushin by them, in front of 770, and to be sent to Toronto of those days was something which wasn't easy. It was Mesiras Nefesh Mamesh, especially for somebody, Rabbi Schochet at least, grew up here. The Rebbetzin came from Eretz Yisrael. It was very, very hard. It came to a point that he asked the Rebbe not to go away, Chas v'Sholem, but can the Rebbe send another couple to help him out? The Rebbe said that he will be here and he will be successful. And Baruch Hashem, I don't have to elaborate of his success. I love him that learned Torah by him, that's seeking his advice and halacha. From Eretz Yisrael.
I'm okay. Lamnatseach, Mismaele Dovid. Jan Chad Noibim Tzuru. Yosegefru Shemil Hey Yaakov. Yishach Ezrechu Mikoide Shemitzion Yesudeku. Yizkar Kol Minchesechu Vailaschu Yedashne Seilu. Yidnechu Chilvovechu Cholatzasu Yemalei. Neranenu B'Shiyusechu B'Shem Eloheini Nidgoi. Mali Adonai Kol Mishaloi Sechu. Atu Yudati Keshi Adonai Meshichoi. Yanehi Mishmei Kotshoi Bigvirois Yesha Yeminoi. Ele Bureche Vele Basisem Menachni B'Shem Adonai Leheini Nazkir. Hemel Korvenu Fuli Vanachni Kamnu Vanisoider. Adonai Yoshiu HaMelech Yaneini B'Yoim Koreini.
call now upon Rabbi Grossbaum, the head shliach of Lubavitch in Ontario, to say Kapitel Kuf Chov Beis, the Rebbe's Kapitel.
Amal is a Dovis Amachti, be Emrim Lee, based on an Eilech. Aim days hoy lag lein of Isharai Shaloyim. Schleim haben New York is a Chubra Lo Yachta. Shop all the Shvatim Shifte Yom, Editly Soil, Hades the Shema Noin. Shamo Yosh, or Kiss Lamish for Kiss face Dovid. Shalosh Lem Shaloyim, Shaloyo Voyer. He shall and Mechele, Shalva Babane Soyer. Manachai or Adar no Shalim Boch. Mam based on Eloheinu, Havaksho, Tevlo.
I'm going to call upon an individual that has been dedicated to the Rav, especially in the last period, Belev Nefesh, to be the MC for the night, none other than his son-in-law, Mani Diena.
My shver was a very unique individual. Whether it was his abilities as a Talmid Chacham Muflag, a Poisek, a Manig, or the best friend to everyone, especially the downtrodden. If you notice the Levaya, not only were the Gedolim of the city in attendance, but at least a group of 20, 30 people who were really not part of any community. He was the confidant of many people outside of the Haredi Olam, and always the defender of the underdog. I remember a community member telling me 30 years ago, I have a claim against the Gevir, and normally I would fear going to a Din Torah, perhaps without merit. But everyone knows, as long as Rav Dovid Schochet is there, everyone gets a fair shake. In addition, his commitment to his Rebbe was also without parallel. He didn't only know Torah, he lived Torah. I never remember a time in 40 years that I walked into the house where he wasn't either learning or talking in Torah. Every family member or those who were close to him knew very well that when you called him, the first question that came out of his mouth was always, what are you learning? And if you weren't forthcoming quickly enough, he immediately began to express to you what he was learning or the latest shaila he was working on. The male Eneklach knew there were no 2-minute phone calls. They simply never happened. However, the most amazing story that I heard happened just lately, at the end of his life 2 months ago, when, as is common in his disease, he had delusion, which is an intermittent confusion which increases in late afternoon, evening, because it's combined with something else called sundowning. As I left him, I told him I would see him in the morning. I realized very obviously that he didn't even recognize who I was. Feeling depressed, I went to daven, and then I went home. 90 minutes later, I got a call from my esteemed uncle, Harav Schochet, and he told me that he had just been in the hospital, that unfortunately it wasn't great, and he was confused. However, he said to me, I must tell you one thing. Before I walked out, I told him of a shaila regarding a goy and the din of lifnei iver, to test his reaction. And Yeshver immediately popped up and said, avoid Zorah, which is, of course, the Moramokim, the source that discusses it. Ladies and gentlemen, he didn't know who I was, but he knew where the sugya lifnei iver was found. That was my shver. We will commence with the Siyum of Mishnayos. The Siyum will be made by the Nifter son, Harav Yossi Schochet, with the Kaddish to follow.
last Mishnah of Uktzin, the last Mishnah of Shas, of Shisha Caesar Mishnah, is really not a negaya to the Masechta of Uktzin itself. It was added by Rebbe to be Messiah over Toy. And the Mishnah ends with Omer Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'Hanchil Chol Tzadik V'Tzadik Shlosh Meis V'Asar Lomes. In the future, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be inheriting to each tzaddik, every single tzaddik, 310 oilames. 310 Sholosh Meis V'Asar. By the way, that's Rosh Hashanah Shema. Sholosh Meis Asar Shema. Shenemar, as it says, L'Hanchil Oyeve Yesh V'Oitzreisei Mamali. That Hashem will inherit as the ones that He loves. Oyev Hashem is Rav Shalom B'Noich, Al Tikr B'Noich and B'Noich. The Hashem will give the Yesh Eitzreis 310 treasures, which He'll give to Yesh is B'Gematria 310, which is the same as Shema, Shin Mem Ayin, Sholish Meis Asora. Amr Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta, Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta says, "Leimotza Kadosh Baruch Hu Kli Machzik Bracha LiYisrael." Hashem didn't find a keli which holds a bracha for Yisrael. Ela Shalom, having the peace is the bracha which is Machzik Shalom. Shenemar, as it says, Hashem Oiz Lami'itin, Hashem Yivarach Zam B'Shalom. There's a minhag by Siyumim to be Mekasher the Siyum with Aschola of the next Masechta, the Aschola with the Soif, which that minhag is actually, the Rebbe points out, is not just a minhag, it's actually a source in the Gemara. The Gemara speaks about, in Brachas, the Gemara speaks about the Kol Parsha, Shoyz Chviva al Dovid, Pasach Ba Ba'ashrei, V'Siyum Ba Ba'ashrei. Every Parsha that Dovid HaMelech had a special love for and a special enjoyment with, he started with Ashrei and he ends with Ashrei, and the Gemara brings a proof. The Chsiv, as it says, Tehillim starts Ashrei Ish. The first kapitel in Tehillim starts Ashrei Ish, and then V'Siyum, that parsha, that inyan, ends at the end of the second parak. But Ashrei, also with Ashrei, D'chsiv Ashrei Kol Chosei Boy. That the same thing, that way he starts Ashrei in the first parak Aleph of Tehillim, the end of parak Beis, which is the end of that parsha, and the Rashi says right away that because parak Aleph and parak Beis and Tehillim is one parsha, ends also with Ashrei. So Tosfos asks on the spot, V'im Toimer Mai Kol HaParshios. What is the Gemara saying? All the parashas that Dovid loved starts and end with the same way. Tosfos says, "Lo yashkon shum parsha acheres shemaschila b'ashrei mesayames b'ashrei Elohi." This is the only one that we find that starts with Ashrei and ends with Ashrei. And Tosfos answers, "V'yeshleimer d'lav dafke posach b'ashrei v'siyum b'ashrei elachsima me'ein psicha." Whenever there's a siyum, there's also me'ein psicha, and this is a klal that Tosfos says. And Tosfos says because you see also that Tila, he starts off many things with Tila David, and it ends off with Halalukas, and it starts with Halalukas, that it has to be Siyum Ke'ein Psicha. So the Siyum of the Shas ends with Shai Oilamis, Shin Yud, which right away starts off afterwards with Shema, Meimosa Keren Shema, which is Sholish Meis Asor Rosh Hashanah. In the same way also, the Siyum of the Shas ends with Hashem Yivarach Zami Basholem with a mem, and it starts off again with Meimosa Keren Shema Shel Shachris Shel Arvis. The Maseches Brachas starts also with a mem. Meimosa, it ends with a mem and starts with a mem. The only difference is that it ends with a mem stuma, a closed mem, an end of mem, and it starts with Meimosa, an open mem, the beginning of a mem. And the difference between a mem stuma and a mem psucha, the Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Kuf Dalet, speaks about that and explains that mem psucha is the mem which is nitin li dorish. It's something which we can darshan about. The Rebbe explains that speaks about Teres Hanigla. It ends with, the Shas ends with mem stuma, which is loy nitin li dorish. Rashi says K'maisa Merkava, which is in Yoni Teres Hanister. So I'm not here to darshan. I'm not here. It's a mem stuma. I'm not here to darshan. Other people will darshan, but that's the siyum of the Shisha Sidrei Mishnah. We have here Hadron. Is there Hadron here?
Oh, you have it there by you in the center.
Rabbi Chananya ben Akash Reimer Ratzah Kodesh Baruch Hu Zagas Yisrael Lefichach Hirvul and Torah Mitzvah Shneimar and Nechavetz L'Mantzika Yagam Tzir V'Yader. Skada V'Skada Shmei Rabba. V'Yom D'Vrach Yerusha V'Yam Malkusi V'Yasam B'Kwana V'Kor M'Shichai. V'Chayich and V'Meich and V'Chayich V'Yisrael V'Agol V'Zman Kor V'Yimr Amen. Hey Shmei Rabba M'Varach Ol Mol Yomai Baruch V'Shtabach V'Svar V'Srem V'Snasei V'Sadar V'Salei V'Salol Shmei D'Kushah V'Richu Leil M'Kover Chosa V'Shirasa V'Shukasa V'Nechamasa D'Mir V'Yom V'Yimr Amen. Al Yisrael V'Rabbanon V'Al Tamideyan V'Al Kol Tamidei Samideyan Kol Mandaskim B'Raisa V'Vat Shradei V'Chol Asar V'Asar Yehy Nochen Shlom Rabba China V'Chizo V'Rachmin V'Chayin Arichin Umzoyin Ravicho V'Rkonim Mikol Mavut V'Shmaya V'Yimr Amen. Yehy Shlom Rabba Mishmaya V'Chayin Toim Melina V'Kol Yisrael V'Yimr Amen. Oysa Shalom V'Yimr Amen V'Yasa Shalom Melina V'Kol Yisrael V'Yimr Amen.
There are seats available throughout the crowd so people in the back can move up. We don't have to sit in the back of the shul. As mentioned, he took his communal responsibilities very seriously. And if he ever saw Pearson in whatever area or matter, he was the first to stand up and scream. He used to tell me, if we don't uphold the standards of our Messiahs, we will have nothing left. Quite often, it was sending people to check out our firm organizations surreptitiously, upholding the kashrus laws in the province, railing against the lack of tznius, or even commenting publicly on matters in our community which he felt contradicted the Messiahs. But he knew full well that his comments would elicit a negative response from influential balabatim rabbonim. However, everything was done with tremendous pikchus. I remember a story that I was involved in as it related to the city Erev. After years that the new Erev was up, it was down for a Shabbos. But the impression given in many circles was that people could still carry based on a previous Erev. My shver was fuming. He said to me, in spite of my respect for the poisik of the previous Erev, how can anyone permit carrying based on an Erev not being checked nor reviewed? He then advised me to pen a letter to be signed by the Vaad Rabbonim, committing to the exclusivity of the new Erev. As I was speaking re a community issue at a rabbinical meeting that week, my shver told me, listen, bring the letter with you, but leave it in your pocket and don't show it to anyone unless you are asked. As I walked in and finished speaking, another community rav asked me, what happened this week, re the Erev? And I explained to him our grave concern regarding this horrible confusion. The rav told me, in front of all the rabbonim, get us a letter that clarifies the matter and we will sign it. At that point, I sheepishly put my hand in my suit pocket and took out the letter. Everyone, of course, started laughing, but they still, at the end, agreed to sign the letter. That night, I called the communal rav to thank him for his invaluable assistance. And he said to me, don't thank me, thank the shver. He put me up to it. How do you think I knew you had a letter? By the way, our fellow rabbonim were really not very pleased, but we did what we felt we had to do to be certain the new Erev continued to exist. Our next speaker worked together with Reb Schochet for over 40 years. Whether it was communal issues in the Vaad Rabbonim or Batei Dinim, they communicated regularly and had a tremendous mutual respect. It gives me great honor to call on the Mordei Asra, the Agudas Yisrael of Toronto, Harav Hagaon, Moshe Mordechai Lowy Shlita.
It's very hard for me to speak.
Sorry, I should have announced he is speaking by Zoom, so
Hello?
there's really no chiyuv to stand up. Unless you want to.
I'm sorry I can't be there personally, and I should be. We worked together so many years. Hagaon Rav Shloshim Zechariah was Isha Leida, a person. Toronto lost now the person who carried the oil of the city. Besides being the Rav of the Lubavitch community, he was the Rav of the Toronto community. That's the Rosh Bezdin, the Rosh of the Rabbanim. I'm speaking now in the name of all the Rabbanim in the city, the whole city. Tam Chacham Shemeis, Hakol Kroivav. When a person like our Rav Schochet leaves this world, we all have to mistabel on him. We all mourn because we lost somebody who was a manig, the way manhigim were used to be in the old days, a person who cared about everything that's happening. I told Rabbanah called Mila the Mosa Alei Ramya, everything that was happening in the city. Okay.
There it is. Okay.
So a person who was Al Ha'eda, the Medrash in this week's Parsha, he says, Reish Bnei Yisrael, when you lift up the Bnei Yisrael, when you lay in this Parsha, the purpose of a manik, and this was the manik that Reb Shochet was, Sisas Reish, lift everybody up, every person according to the Tehillim, according to their godless, Ketanim according to their godless, every person, his duty he felt as being a Rav, caring about every person. How can we lift a person up? How can we lift the city up? How could we lift Toronto up? As the shliach of the Rebbe Zechariah Bracha, he felt his obligation to carry that out fully, with every fiber of his nefesh. And a person like Rav Shochet, you can't find somebody was this great person, but so humble and so giving to every person and not feeling any gaiva to anybody. And this was his godless. The godless of Shochet was, he was a gadol, emes a gadol. Emes a gadol is someone we found from the first manik in Klal Yisrael, Moshe Rabbeinu, was somebody in this expansion, how he went and pleaded and was ready, ready to give everything away just to protect Klal Yisrael. That's what he did everything. If he had to go to court to testify somebody for Yoni Klal, if he had to go fight for something, he was ready. He effaced himself from everything just to help another person, to do for another person. We worked so many years in a bezdin. First I'll mention the Nasa, the Kayin Gadol war, the Choshen Alibai, where the whole Choshen Mishpat was Alibai. Every word in Choshen Mishpat was Alibai. And not only the Choshen, the whole Eifait, the whole Shulchan Aruch. Rav Shochet used to go give the chinas all over. It was mamish a spoil. Al middle of a meeting, he'd go give the chinas, come back and the chinas giving smichas all over, giving shurim and the besmedrish, giving shurim and Torah. But the main thing is that Benasa Alibai, the Zichron of Klal Yisrael, always remembering everything. We sat many years in the Torah. Sometimes he was from one side. All these years, we never had one sichsel. Together with Hagaon Amasiak Shlita, who was part of the Bezin always. And it's interesting that today, for some reason, he came to me, and it's probably he wanted the Bezin that we here we have a Sephardi Rav, a Lubavitch Rav, and a regular Rav, and we all worked together with the biggest cover to each other, caring for each other. All these years, even though we had, there was machlokas, there was never a machlokas. It's Torah. Torah and Torah, and that's because that's whenever you spoke to Rav Schochet, you'd call me up middle of the day with a diff sugya and that sugya, middle of the night about a sugya. When we met in Bezdin, in the middle of Bezdin, we dealing with Bezdin, all of a sudden you're speaking about a sugya here, and then what do you say? I mean, someone like Pasak Pumay Girsa, Torah was always with him. I think he was a shtik Torah. He's like a Talmud Chacham is Torah, Sefer Torah. His whole life was Torah, Torah, Torah. And this expansion we find that the Torah starts off with the Inyan of Kir, Kedusha with the Hara. Rav Schochet, his Torah was Kedusha with the Hara, the way he davened, the way you learn, with Chassidus and everything. But the main thing is, he was somebody who was Kol Ruach Habriyas Noichemen. Everybody who spoke to him, every person, and he spoke to all kinds of people, not everyone agreed with Shitas, and he still, everyone's Ruach Habriyas, because everyone knew there was one thing by him. What Rabbi Shem wants, and what Torah wants, that's all that he wanted. And that's all he wanted. But everything Torah, the way he gave respect to every person, everyone went away and feeling, like Mani just mentioned, feeling that there's somebody there who cares about him. Our city lost somebody that we all have to cry for. Somebody who was keeping up the city. Somebody who was the Einei Ha'eda. The Einei Ha'eda, he saw the Einei, someone who saw clearly everything that has to be done with clarity, and just sitting with him. The ruchnis, the guy felt just being with him, being b'mechitzasai. You felt the ruach haTorah, the ruach Hashem, the kedushas Hashem, being with him. By every bezin, you saw that you see by bezin the lekim nitzav altas. The Rebbeinu Shalom is there. You saw it by him. By anything he did in bezin, anything bezin had accomplished. And I was in the spot how people came over, how much he did for them, this person, that person, I was ready. And everything was done by nivus. Everything was done with humbleness and caring for the other person. Agrid be'esped the Luya. The agrid be'esped is to cry. But others say the Luya is to pick everybody up. Everybody just be a little of a Schochet. Someone who always learns. Someone davens the way you should daven. Does things, mitzvahs, the way you should do mitzvahs. Cares about Klal Yisrael the way he cared about everyone in Klal Yisrael. So lift everybody up. Instead of putting people down, lift them up. And that's what he did. Lifted every person. Klal B'nai Yisrael. He lifted up, just being with him, talking to him, and everything. His words that he with wisdom and many times people asked about bracha, and people livened up the way he benched and he did everything for everybody. But we're getting together we shouldn't be misatzel b'hesped. We shouldn't be misatzel chas v'shalom b'hesped of such a gadol. We have to know that we lost a gadol. Sar v'gadol nofel b'Yisrael. A gadol who's in every sense of the word. Sar, someone who was a general in the Rabbanim, a general in the city, general in the Rabbanis of Lababa, general in Klal Yisrael. We lost a Sar v'gadol b'Yisrael. We have to remember now to be fulfilled at halal, but the halal that we are missing now, missing this part of Klal Yisrael, the Rosh of Klal Yisrael. We have to all learn a little from him. The Lowy, fetch a little from him. Learn, be a person like him. Be a person who cares about every person. Be a person that doesn't care for her own interests. Somebody who cares for the interests of Klal Yisrael, the interests of everybody. The Baruch should help. And Tzaddik leaves this world, that he should be a Me'il Tzyoisher. He's now in the Bezin Shel Mala. He's in the Bezin Shel Mala now, and he knows how much he cared for everyone in the Dar. And he also had, we all remember, as Schochet Rebbetzin Zazangazan. Every time we needed him, we called. She was there, always there to help him and do everything, anything we needed. When he came to have a meeting in his house, even whenever we needed, and she was ready to do everything. And if you saw a person like Rav Schochet, he had a Rebbetzin behind him that was just like him. And the Rebbeinu should help that he should be a Me'il Tzyoisher for her, for the whole family, a beautiful, beautiful family that he left over, beautiful kehilla, what he built. He built the kehilla. When he came, it was two people alone. Look at the big kehilla that Lubavitch has here. The kehilla of Toronto that he built, Baruch Hashem. Rebbeinu should help that he should be a Me'il Tzyoisher for all of us. We should be zeicher to see. And he cared always about Eretz Yisrael, the care that he had for what's happening in Eretz Yisrael. You come up there, be a male choice, and being the best to pass them, that the Gula should come by Meir B'Yameinu, which we Zoiche, that Mochadim al Kapanim, that we Zoiche see, Volitzi and Goyal, and Meir B'Yameinu.
Actually, a dear friend that I just lost, Rabbi David Schochet. Very close friends. And I remember when he came with his family to New York, this multi-talented family. It didn't take long for us to get together. We were about the same age, and we went together in the same base medrash, 770. There were certain things we studied together on occasion, namely Chassidus, Nigla, Halacha, and we just sort of fit in together in our Halacha Chaim and some of our ideas and thoughts and what we want to be, what we would like to be. And I miss him. I miss him. After he was married, we would talk often, long talks at the telephone about certain Rabbanic problems that affected Chabad in different parts of the world as well as in New York. And he had a clear head, and it was an enjoyment. We got along very well. I want to focus for a moment on something very historic in the history of Chabad that we both took part together in. It was 1956. There was a tragedy in Kfar Chabad that affected the Chabad movement. And what happened was some Fadayin criminals broke into the Beis Sefer Malacha in Kfar Chabad, Mincha time, and killed 5 students and a teacher. It was a tragedy. Everyone was pained. It made world news. And people had just recently come from different countries that were at war, different countries that Judaism was suffered enormously. Some of them in Kfar Chabad felt that it's like a double whammy. They just came from a place of war, and now this happened in Kfar Chabad, and some people thought maybe they should leave. In any case, the Rebbe found out that some people actually wanted to leave Kfar Chabad, and the Rebbe did not want them to leave. Not because the Rebbe needed them, but they needed the Rebbe. They needed to be in Kfar Chabad. And the Rebbe decided to send a number of Talmidei HaYeshiva, 10 students of the Zal in 770, to Eretz Yisrael to spend some time with the families that recently become Tishovim in Kfar Chabad, to see that they not leave. The Rebbe says by building in Meizdus Chinuch, Bezeis Tnuchamu. There's a good future in Kfar Chabad. So the Rebbe selected 10 Bochrim from the Zal, two of whom were Dovid, Schochet, and myself. And it was very historic because Kfar Chabad had never seen products of the Rebbe over the first 6 years of his institute. And you're amazed at the Chassidishkeit and the Chazar, the Chassidus, it was really very, very, very well accepted and well received. And then we came back, and the Rebbe, Tzarmas, when we came back, and he was very happy with the Shlichus. It seems that we accomplished what the Rebbe wanted, that nobody left Kfar Chabad, and they increased the intensity of the Hiskashras and the Keshet to the Rebbe. Dovid was really an important, integral part of the Shlichus. He spoke well, and it left a good impression on the various kehillas and mesas that we visited. Very important and very historic is while he was there, he found his wife, with the life that they spent together, had its roots in Kfar Chabad, and that historic trip. His Rebbetzin should have God should keep her and God should bless her going forward with her family.
Now, for the first time ever, these 12 Shloshim are coming together from across the globe for a reunion to recount their historic Shlichus.
So I want for a moment to project. This happened 62 years ago, the Shlichus. What does it mean for us, young Bochim that some of them never saw the Rebbe? How does it project to you? We know the Baal Shem Tov said, it is worthwhile for a Jew to live in this world. Miko Romo, come down in this world. We live 70, 80 years to do once a Teuve Yidden, Begashmies, and who speaks when it's Beruchnis? The Rebbe gave each one of us an ability to be Mechaya Mesim. Mechaya Mesim. What is Mechaya Mesim? Reshoim Nikru Mesim. Reshoim Nikru Mesim. And the Rebbe kocht sich in all the Mifzoim. What is the Mifzoim? A Teuve Tuna Yidden. Be Mechaya Mesim Yidden. In order to do that, obviously, you have to learn. When you don't know what is a kosher mezuzah, you cannot go to mezuzah. Kashrus, you know kashrus. Shabbos. So the Rebbe gave each one of us the power to be Mechaya Mesim. The whole Shlichus in Eretz Yisrael, what was it? Doing a Teuve Yidden. A Teuve Yidden, Begashmes and Beruchnis. And this is a matter that is not negated, it was 62 years ago. That is each one of us on a daily basis. And the Rebbe gave us the instrument, he gave us the instruction, how to do it, how to go about it. And everybody has the shlichus from the Rebbe. And as the Belzer Rebbe, when we visit the Belzer Rebbe, he looked at us and said, Kinderlich, when you fulfill the shlichus from the Rebbe, you bring Mashiach. So when we do that, this is what we can take from it. Our sages tell us the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed on account of Sinas Chinam. There was no love lost between the Jews. To gather tonight together, being called in the eve of Tisha B'Av for the memory of one that departed from us, for a union for Chesed Shel Emes, is a good sign
avhu b'chaim. The Shver had tremendous kesher to all of his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Whether they were older, where he could have his shaykhs b'Torah with them, or younger, where he simply played with them or just enjoyed their company. Whether they lived in Toronto or throughout the USA, or whether they were Lubavitch or not a member of Chabad. He said the capital Tehillim for every child, grandchild, and great-grandchild every day. He was always the go-to person when you had an issue or a question. When we were in New York, he once said to me, it is almost kedai to be in this matzav, to have the family together. But again, he had a tremendous pikchus in his family dealings. I remember when my daughter Rivki came of age, my wife wanted her to follow her family's minhag and light Ner Shabbos. I felt that it wasn't my minhag, but now we should discuss the matter. So I went to the Shver, who, by the way, in a lesson to Shvers, always took my side, whether I was right or even quite often when I was wrong. Always, always, always took my side. So he immediately told me, you know that there's a proof from the Shelos Yavitz that a woman can follow her own minhag in her mitzvahs. And in fact, he told me that Moshe says a similar thing, but it could be different here because it's your daughter and not your wife. However, I have an answer for you. I know that you have accepted upon yourself the minhagim of the Bnei Yeshiva. If you look at the Aruch HaShulchan, he brings down a custom common in Lita, and even unmarried girls lit candles. And he told me, I also remember seeing that this was also the minhag in Beis Brisk, something, by the way, I found later in the Yaznidbru. So my advice to you, so that everyone should be happy, is for my granddaughter to light 2 candles every Shabbos. He continued saying, by the way, it should be noted that the Rebbe explains in the Tshuva to Reb Gedalia Felder, Zecher Tzaddik Livracha of Toronto, the reason why he was masakin 1 candle and not 2. But if you want, and only if you want, let your daughter light 2, which is in fact what she did. After he finished telling me this, with his trademark twinkle in his eye, he turned to me and said, by the way, there is no grace mitzvah to tell your wife that this was my idea. I said, better if it comes from you. I would like to call on my son, of Mani Diena, the oldest grandchild, and the Manal and the Rebbe in the Yeshivas Nei Yisrael of Toronto, to say a few words to Chabad HaSifra.
Rabbi Ganzburg, when he came in to be maspid, Rav Ram Avli Pasfiller, the Rav in Vilna, he began the hesped by quoting the words of Dovid HaMelech, Hidu Lashem Kiru V'Shmai Hidu Ba'am Eliyasav. And he was masber the pasuk that when one comes to praise the Rabbeinu Shalom by the Amim, by the other nations, he has to begin the praise of Ali Laisav, was speaking about the actions of the Rabbeinu Shalom, the Nisim of the Rabbeinu Shalom, the myrdik things, the amazing things the Rabbeinu Shalom does. Where else they won't be makir, they won't be able to recognize the greatness of the Rabbeinu Shalom. However, Haidu Lashem Kiru V'Shmai, when someone comes to praise the Rabbeinu Shalom by Klal Yisrael, by the Yidden, all you have to do is mention the name of the Rabbeinu Shalom, and already the praise is obvious. Rabbi Ganzburg continued and he said, Ilu Ayusiba, if I would have came to be maspid and Adam Gadol, that people didn't recognize, I would have to come in first and explain to you the actions of the Adam Gadol, the tremendous milas of the Adam Gadol. However, coming to be maspid the Rav of Vilna, all I have to do for you to be able to bemoan and recognize the greatness of the Aveda is to say that the Rav is Avek, the Rav was Nifter. Coming in as an Einikol to this Shloshim. Someone who, as Rabbi Ganzburg of Lozhner said on the Rav in Vilna, someone who was recognized, b'chol plach lita, someone who was recognized in every community, someone who was recognized in the city, in every community, in every area, among every group, as an Adam Gadol. All you have to say is Harav Dovid Shochet is avek, and already the greatness of the loss is recognizable. The Mishnah in Avos says, Perik Daled, Mishnah Yud Gimel, Reb Shimon Aimer, Shlosh Ksarim Heim, Keser Torah, V'Keser Kuna, V'Keser Malchus, V'Keser Shem Toiv Oila Al Gabein. The Mishnah says, there's a Keser of Torah, there's a Keser of Kahuna, and there's a Keser of Malchus. However, the Keser Shem Toiv, the crown of Shem Toiv, of a good name, is Oil al Gabein, is above all of them. And the obvious question the Mefarshim speak about in this Mishnah is, the Mishnah began Shlosh Ksarim. There are 3 crowns. However, if you count through the Mishnah says Keser Torah, Keser Hukuna, Keser Malchus, but the Mishnah ends off with a 4th crown, Keser Shem Toiv Oil al Gabein. That's a 4th crown. The Mishnah began that there's only 3 crowns. So Rashi says a pshat. He'll begin explaining what is Keser Shem Tov. What does it mean? The crown of a good name. So the Mefarshim Ramazber, Chavetz Chaim, and other Mefarshim, that a good name, Keser Shem Tov, means Shal Yedeya Shem Tov Sheyotzel Adam Al Maisim Tovim Akol Roitzim Listabek B'Maisav V'Shem Shemayiv Miskadesh Shal Yedei Zeh. That through the good name of the person, which were based on the person's actions and the person's Maisim Tovim, everyone wants to connect to the person. Everyone wants to connect to the Rabbeinu Shalom when they see this is someone who personifies Maisim Tovim, an Eved Hashem, V'Shem Shemayim Miskadesh Shal Zeh. And through that comes about a great Kiddush Hashem. Zok Rashi, Shem Tov, what does it mean, Shem Tov? Rashi says, the reason why it's not counted on the 3 crowns is because the avodah of the person is to work on the first 3 crowns. The Keser Torah, the Keser Kuna, the Keser Malchus, which will be masber each one. However, when a person has the Keser Torah, he has the crown of Torah. When he has the crown of Kahuna, when he has the crown of Malchus, Keser Shem Tov is an outcome. What happens is that Keser Shem Tov is something that comes out. The Keser Torah leads to a Keser Shem Tov, to a good name. The Keser Kahuna leads to a good name, which is the Shem Shemayim Miskadesh, which is the Kiddush Hashem. And the Keser Malchus leads to a Shem Tov, which brings about this Kiddush Hashem. The Keser Shem Tov is not one of the 3 crowns that the person is working on. The Keser Shem Tov is what comes out from a person who worked on the first 3 crowns. When we speak about Saba, the Keser Shem Tov, I heard years ago a story from one of my Rebbeim who was at a meeting of the Vaad and Beis, and Reb Shlomo Miller, the Rosh Kollel, soll sein gesund, was sitting there and they were waiting for him to begin the meeting, and he was quiet. And they were waiting and they were waiting. When's he going to begin the meeting? Someone asked him, is the Rosh Kollel ready to start? And he said, nope, I'm not ready yet. So someone asked him, what's the Rosh Kollel waiting for? So he said, Reb Dovid Shochet is not here yet. How can we begin a meeting of the Vaad and Beis without Reb Dovid Shochet's daya? Without Reb Dovid Shochet's hearing, Reb Dovid Shochet's view? The Shem Tov that he had by the Chashuvim, by the G'daylim, how they were makir his greatness. At the Levaya, one of my Rebbeim said to me, one of the Rosh Yeshiva in town, said to me that just the sight of the tsar on the faces of the G'dayli Hayir, of the G'daylim of the city, what a Roshim it made on him. The crown, this Shem Tov, comes about through Keser Torah, Keser Kahuna, and Keser Malchus. Keser Torah Keser Torah, the Rambam speaks about what Keser Torah is. Keser Torah is like the Rambam, is one who is not ma'abid leilaisa, who spends on a constant basis his days, his nights, not being mesiach das, meaning his mind is constantly focused on Torah. And the Rambam ends off, and the Rambam says that Keser Torah comes about even someone who wastes one night away. He says someone who's lo ya'abed afilu echad mehan, someone who doesn't even waste one night, and he's not busy with shina achila, with eating and his drinking, he's busy kol zman, his eating, his drinking, everything is with Torah, everything is together with Torah. That's one who is Zichro to Keser Torah. Speaking as a grandchild, the memories that we have of Saba, thinking back to the different memories we have, I almost can't remember a conversation that we had with Saba that wasn't based on Torah. Every time we met Saba, every conversation on Erev Shabbos, when we call him sometimes, different times from time to time, and speak to him before Shabbos, everything was based around Torah. What are you learning? And then after we discussed the sugya you're learning, it was on to the Minchas Chinuch, from one sugya to another sugya. Having the picture growing up, what a Pesach Seder is supposed to look like. The pilpul and the pshat, going through the different yisaidis in the Haggadah, learning up the Haggadah. The reishim, the impression that this makes on the Einiklach, is something that stays with us for life, even as a young child, when we don't necessarily appreciate coming in and getting a faher every time you come to see Saba. But as you get older, the chashivas that it puts into us, the chashivas HaTorah, that it was able to put into us, is something that's long-lasting for the rest of our lives. The Keser, Kahuna, and I'll send one story at the end of Saba's life. 2 weeks before Saba was nifter, was the last time I was able to go in to speak to Saba. And Saba at that point, my mother told me that day he was delirious, like my father mentioned earlier, and it's not gay, you can't speak to him. I went in, there was a Bachar in Yeshiva, and I had to go to the hospital for stitches, and he went to North York General. So once I was taking him to North York General, I decided anyways, even though my mother said that Maisa Saba is not with it today, and he's delirious, and he's not going to recognize me, I'm going to go in anyways. So I went into Saba, and I walked into the room, and I was watching Saba. He was lying down, he was asleep, half asleep, in and out, moving his head here and there. And I said to him, Saba, it's Dovi, I'm here. So he opened, he quickly turned his head and he looked up and he said, "Was lernst du? What are you learning?" And then I said to Saba what sugya I was learning, and then I said, "Saba, was lernst du?" And he said, "Avodah Zarah." And he started quoting the Gemara to me. He started mouthing off the Gemara, mumbling the words of the Gemara. And then he put his head back down. And off Keser Kahuna. Keser Kahuna is, as my father mentioned earlier, being worried about every pirtza of Kedusha, fearing the Avodah, leading the Avodah, whether in Kedusha, whether in Kashrus, whether in Tznius. And Keser Malchus, finally, like Rashi says, Melech is the Dayan. Melech is the one who judges, B'tzedek u'mishpat. And every Saba on a constant basis, every Shaila, donning up one Shaila after another Shaila, visiting him in the hospital, in his hospital bed, taking one Shaila after another Shaila, constantly his head working in the dinim, in the Shailas. Kol panim, these three Nakudas together, these three Milas, the Keser Kahuna, the Keser Torah, the Keser Malchus, led to this Keser Shem Tov. I'll just end off. One last Nakuda. The Gemara in Ksuba says a story with Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, as we know, left his wife for 24 years. At the end of the 24 years, when he came back, 24,000 Talmidim. As Rabbi Akiva approached his town, they came out to greet the great Gadol Rabbi Akiva with his Talmidim. And there was a woman that came, and she threw herself down in front of him and started kissing his knees. And the Talmidim, not understanding who this woman was, they tried to push her away, to remove her. And Rabbi Akiva rebuked him and he told him, "Leave her alone. Sheli v'shelachem shelahu." What's to us and what's to them is really hers. Growing up as a grandchild in the house, we were makir on a constant basis. We witnessed Savta, when she came to Toronto originally, she had a passion everyone knows for dentistry. And when she realized what it meant for the Hatzlacha of the Shul, for the Hatzlacha of Saba and his Torah, even though she had a tremendous passion for it, she gave it up. And she said this is what she has to do to put her focus on taking care of the kids completely so Saba can be focused on the Shul, so Saba can be focused on his Avodah. And the tremendous Hakaras HaTayv that both we have to have as a family, Shali, us as a family, we're Zeicha to have Saba as a Reish Mispacha, Saba lead us. And that was all because Shalah, that was all from Safta, that was all from the Keichas behind the scenes. And the Ibergemkeit, the given over that Safta, how she gave herself over. But it's Shali v'Shalachem Shalahi. Us and everything the community has here, everything this shul has had for the last 60 years. As a grandchild in the house on a constant basis that we were able to see how everything, Safta had no zich, there was no self-Torah, everything was given up to the shul, everything was given up to the community. And that was Safta's complete avodah over the years. And as a mevakesh, on behalf of the mishpacha, from the rest of the Bnei Mishpacha, and from the community, that everything that we had, that Safta had when Saba was here, Shali v'Shalachem Shlahu, we have to be makir tov, everything came from the keichas that Safta put in behind the scenes, and we have to continue all that support, the emotional support, the physical support, the financial support, to Safta, and Emir Tashem, Saba should be able to mail tziyosher, on Safta, on the entire mishpacha, on the Einiklach, and on the entire community. Shkayach.
Kadabi, just took my sheets. That's yes, yeah. At this time, we'd like to call on my nephew, Rav Shalom Schochet from Coral Springs, Florida, to share Zichroinus of the Zayda.
Bershus Avimori, Rabbonim Chashuvim, Shluchim, V'kol Akol HaKodesh Hazeh. A chazan once began Chazar Tzashatz by saying Hokel, Hagodol, Hagibor, V'hanoira, V'ha'adir, V'ha'izus, V'ha'yoroi, Hechazok, V'ha'amitz, V'ha'vadai, V'ha'nechbad. The Gemara in Brochus tells us that Rav Chanina reprimanded him. He said, is that it? Have you concluded all the praises of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Even the few words that we say in the praises of Hashem, we only say because Moshe Rabbeinu and Anshe Knesset HaGdolah told us to do so. Moshe Melech Basar V'dam. Imagine a human king, Shehayuloi Elef Alofim Dinarei Zahav, who had thousands upon thousands of golden coins, treasures of gold. Yet people are praising him, he has some silver. Shkoyach, he has some silver. When the family asked me to share Zichroinus about Zaidi by the Shloshim, to be honest, I was quite hesitant. Zaidi was a giant of a man, the epitome of godless. He was what every father wishes for when they bless their child to be a chassid, a Yerushalayim, and a lamdan. What should I say here? That Zaidi had the midas of Aaron HaKoyin. He was oyev sholem v'roidev sholem. Oyev esabriyos and mekarven la Torah. That Zaidi uses chachma to create sholem ben adam lachaveiroi uben ish leishtoi. That Zaidi garnered the respect of all the Rabbonim in the city from every single community without exception, and had an unmatched way of creating achdus in Toronto. Should I say that Zaidi was a Rav's Rav, who fielded shilas from Shluchim and Rabbonim from throughout the world? That the Rebbe thought so highly of my Zaidi and his learning of Torah, that the Rebbe referred to my Zaydi in letters as Harav, even while he was still a bocher. That Zaydi was from the only Shluchim ever to be sent with the title Rav, and that he was the first Shliach to be sent to Toronto to establish Yiddishkeit. The Torah mitzvahs and ma'asim tovim that my Zaydi accumulated are elef alofim dinarei zahav, and anything said to describe my Zaydi feels to me like just the kesef. Indeed, sometimes less is more. Vayidoim Aaron. Aaron was quiet. But then I remembered a story that my Zaydi told me many years ago. In the early days of his shlichus, my Zaydi was giving a shiur to a group of non-religious teenagers. The theme of the class was that a Yid needs to serve Hashem with his slavos, with passion. When a Yid puts on tefillin, when a Yid davens, when a Yid shakes a lulav, it should not be mitzvahs anoshim melumada, mechanical, void of enthusiasm. It must not be robotic. Mitzvahs have to be done with ava, with yira, with emotion, with passion, with a bren. Now, throughout the shiur, my Zaydi kept repeating that a Yid cannot be a robot. A Yid cannot be a robot. A robot does what it's programmed to do, but it has no life, it has no feeling. Now, having grown up in Switzerland and Holland, as we know, my Zaydi had a very strong accent. And his mantra sounded more like, a Yid cannot be a robot. A Yid cannot be a robot. A robot. After the shiur, one of the teenagers came over to my Zaydi. He had a long ponytail. He told my Zaydi, I love that shiur. I loved everything you said. It made perfect sense. But I have one question. Rabbi, what did you mean when you said that a Jew cannot be a rowboat? What does a rowboat have to do with anything? What does a rowboat have to do with a Jew? My friends, it was this question. It was the intrigue about the rowboat that resulted in this bocher schmoozing with my Zaydi for hours after that shiur. And it was the first step on his path back to Yiddishkeit. Today, that boy is a shliach in South Africa. My Zaydi taught me that mi som pel adam, anoichi eyem picha. When our intentions are sincere, we come not with our own koiches, but with the koiches of the Eibishter. We have a special siyata d'shmaya. So what would my Zaydi want from us now? What would the Rav want and wish from his kehilla, his soin marisai, who he guided for nearly 70 years? I have no doubt that as a chassid of the Rebbe, he would desire, as the Rebbe declared after the passing of the Rebbitzin, that v'acha yitin elivai. As a pasuk in Gehelas teaches us, we who are still alive should take to heart and internalize the values and the special qualities of the nifter. Perhaps the most unique attribute of my Zaydi was his ability to relate to everybody, from Talmidei Chachamim to Anoshim Pshutim and everyone in between. As was clear from the robot story, Zaydi had a knack of striking conversation with anyone, putting them at ease and making them feel comfortable and excited about their Yiddishkeit. Zaydi would ask about their children, about their family, about their parnasa. B'makam gevurasai, atamoitzi and vasanusai. Zaydi's greatness was in his humility. It was a pella. My Zaydi was a huge Talmud Chacham, a poisik, a miyayitz. Yet his compassion and care for others was always present. Zaydi took the time with patience to give attention to those who needed it most. You know, Zaydi would often recount a fascinating Gemara from Baba Basra. The Gemara there tells us that Rav Yoseph, the son of Rav Yeshua, was once on the verge of death. When he recuperated, his father asked him, "My What did you see up there in heaven? What did you see in Shemayim? Rav Yosef responded, Oilam hafach re'isi. I saw an upside-down world, an inverted world. Elyonim lamata, mitzachtainim lamala. Those who here in this world were important, up there, they were insignificant. And those who in this world were insignificant, up there, they were way above. Rav Yeshua told his son, Oilam bora re'isa. What you saw is actually the truth. It's a real world. That's a clear world. You saw a real thing. Now, who exactly did Rav Yosef see up there? Was everybody up and down, or was it specific individuals? Who did he see that was Elyonim and Tachtainim? Who was this? Who are these people? So Taisus on that Gemara, a remarkable Taisus. He says in the name of Rabbeinu Hananel that the Gaonim had a Kabbalah Rav Mipi Rav. That the people that Rav Yosef saw up in Shemayim were none other than the individuals in a story, in an incident that occurred in Gemara and Shabbos. The Gemara says that Rav Yehuda was once sitting in front of his Rebbe Shmuel when a woman came in front of Shmuel, the Rebbe, and was crying about some injustice that was done to her. Shmuel paid no attention to her. He was busy learning Torah. So Rav Yehuda, the Talmud, asks his Rebbe, Rebbe, loisaver leimar, Rebbe, you know the pasuk says, oitem oznai mizakas dal. The pasuk in Mishlei tells us that even great Talmidei Chachamim must give attention to the cries of the poor and the simple. Now, even though Shmuel had taught Rav Yehuda all of Torah, nonetheless in Shemayim, Rav Yosef saw Tachtoinim Lamala, that Rav Yehuda was elevated above his Shmuel Rebbe, his Rebbe Shmuel, since he taught the most important message in Yiddishkeit, being humble, caring for another, and encouraging others to appreciate Torah and themselves. Tachtoinim Lamala, those who are like my Zaydi, and care even for individuals who are Tachtoinim, and up Lamala in the highest madregas of Olam HaEmes, Olam Bora Re'isi. I had the schus of spending many Pesachs with my Zaydi and Bobby in my parents' home. My Zaydi once noticed my youngest daughter, Sarah Shosha, trying to get his attention. My Zaydi lifted her up, put her on his lap, and with his fingers playfully made believe like he was applying makeup and lipstick and blush. When a child, when any Yid would reach out to my Zaydi, he had a way of lifting them up and making them feel special about who they are. With all the elef alofim dinarei zov of Zaydi's Torah, ultimately Zaydi's distinctive gadlus was his way of paying attention to those in the community who needed his compassion, care, and chizuk. He was mila on such a high level, yet at the same time, he was approachable and down to earth. Now, my Zaydi's avas Torah was unmatched, but something unique was his desire to inspire others to learn more Torah and to enjoy the geschmackheit of learning. I do not remember a conversation ever in which Zaydi did not ask, what sugya I'm in? What am I learning? He would always say, you have a good head, utilize it, use it to learn Torah. Now, as it turns out, he would have the same optimism and positivity with everyone he spoke to. My brother Shmuley had been learning a daf Gemara every single day for the past couple of years with a daf yomi cycle. A couple of months ago, back in May, I got a random call from my Zaydi. He called me out of the blue. The primary purpose of the call was to ask me to make sure that my brother keeps learning. Shalom, I want you to make sure Shmuley keeps learning. So I called my brother. I told him about the unusual call, and I asked if he knew what my Zaydi is referring to. My brother Shmuley was shocked. Shocked. He couldn't believe it. He told me that after completing many Masechtas, he decided to take a break from Maseches Gittin. for personal reasons. And his plan was to jump in with the next Masechta. 2 days into Maseches Gittin, my Zaidi called Shmuley. He said, Shmuley, what's with the learning? Shmuley couldn't believe it. He didn't tell anyone that he was taking a pause. Of course, he assured my Zaidi that he's going to continue. The very next day is when my Zaidi called me to make me my brother Shimer. A month later, I went to visit my Zaidi in the hospital. And I asked, how do you know that Shmuley took a pause? He didn't tell anyone. How do you know? My Zaidi smiled. He put his hands on his heart. And he said, I felt it. I felt it. As it says in this week's parsha, Lach Sheiv Machshavos. My Zaidi knew my brother's thoughts. He was connected to others because his neshama felt other neshamas. To conclude, the Mishnah tells us, Al shloisha dvorim ha'olam oimid, ala Torah, v'ala avoda, v'al gemilas chasadim. For decades, the Toronto community was oimid, spiritually sustained, because of the Torah, avoda, and gemilas chasadim of my Zaidi, v'tzadik yisoid olam. Toronto now has a void. Lubavitch now has a void. Klal Yisrael has a void. We can all collectively fill the void by individually committing ourselves to one small improvement in Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim. Let's learn from Zaidi's Derech HaChaim and be Magbia Shefolim Admoraim to uplift those who need uplifting, especially our children, our community members, and those who desire to grow in Yiddishkeit. Oyeves abriyos umekarven la Torah. Let's each take upon ourselves something, even something small, in gratitude of, and le'ilui nishmas, the Rav, my Zaidi. When I was a child, I had the schos of davening Shmoneh Esrei right next to my Zaidi, often under his talus, right over here, in this corner. There were times when I heard him crying. As a young child, I imagined he was crying for himself, his own needs. As I got a bit older, I imagined he was crying for his family, perhaps for me. When I became more mature, I realized that his tears were tefillos for the community and for Klal Yisrael. I am certain that those tefillos will not end, and that Zaidi will continue to be a melitz yosher, a gute better for his kinder, his eneklach, his or eneklach, for kol kahal kadisha hadain, and for Klal Yisrael. To be Mitzayim b'toiv, mishenichnas Adar marben b'simcha. One of the last messages my Zaidi told me was, ki b'simcha seitzeu. Zaidi wanted people to be happy. He wanted people to have nachas from their children, but especially to have nachas from themselves. Shir Amalois le Dovid. Dovid sang, Samachti be'oimrmeli. I was full of simcha. I was delighted when they told me, Beis Hashem Nelech, we're going to the house of Hashem. May the neshama of Zaidi, Harav Dovid ben Harav Dovi Yehuda Olav Shalom, go besimcha to the highest levels of Beis Hashem in Olam HaEmes, Yelchol Mechayel Chayel, until the time we all daven for, that Akitzu Varanu Shoich Neofer B'mheir V'yameinu.
I'd like to call on the final Anikel speaking tonight, Rav Dubi Lisker, Shliach in Mequon, Wisconsin.
In light of the fact that my two cousins stole my speech, and that Tzar B'Chaim applies to human beings as well, we'll keep it short. I'll try. Haya Anav Haya chassid, v'haya talmid shel Rebbe. He was humble, he was a chassid, and he was a student of the Rebbe. The prophet Micha says, Avat chassid min haaretz, that a chassid has been lost, taken from the world. The Malbim explains the chassid that we're talking about in this pasuk is somebody who goes beyond the letter of the law, both when it comes to mitzvahs and dealing with God and dealing with other human beings. Good evening, and thank you everyone for coming tonight to celebrate the life of my grandfather. As the Zohar HaKadosh tells us that the idea of the Shloshim is the culmination of the judgment that the soul goes through, and in order to push the soul through and help the soul through, we gather together to share Torah and talk about the Schusim of the neshama. And as the Mabri Yabik writes, that in order for the neshama to completely bind and connect to Hashem, it has to go through a process of 30 days. And tonight is the culmination of that. So I'm just going to share some reflections that had some time over the past few weeks to really sit and think about the impact that my grandfather had on me. You see, to most of you, he was the Rav. To me, he was Saba. He was my grandfather. As a youngster, it happened to be that I pretty much was not very interested. I did not love sitting in shul. I can't even say that I loved learning in school, although I did like the good grades. You see, I was kind of aimless, without any real goal, besides for becoming a basketball player, which didn't work out. But we would spend pretty much every Pesach here in Toronto, and during that time I got to know my grandfather and my grandmother, and I realize now the great influence that my grandfather had on me. How when we would walk to shul, the warm greeting that he would give everybody, regardless of who it was. It could be the gabbai, it could be the president, it could be the schlepper. Each person got a warm greeting, a handshake. How he would hand every child a lollipop, and with that warm smile, how my grandfather would get so involved in the Seder, how every word in the Haggadah was a portal to a completely different interpretation and different story to what the Haggadah was telling us. And it was amazing how he would come alive. Sitting on the floor of his study in the basement, watching him field shilas all day, phone calls from around the world, people coming in and out of the house, question after question, but the patience that he gave to each person to listen to their question, to hear them out, and to respond to them. How he would treat each person was just amazing. His eyes would light up every time I shared something that I was learning, and he always had something to add, something to ask, a way to push me to go look up the answer to his question. The way he would always set me up to give him the wrong answer, but then point me in the direction of the right answer. He had a knack at doing that. Through all this and much more, he showed me that Torah is not just an idea, but Torah is life. It was his life. It was what he dedicated his life to. He showed me that Torah was meaningful and relevant today, as relevant as it was the day it was given on Har Sinai, especially with all his gadget-related issues and halachis. Every time a new gadget came out, he'd show it to me. He'd show me all the halachic issues that would come along with it, all the contemporary halachic issues in general that were coming up. The questions that he would be asked, he would always make sure to share it with me. He knew it would pique my interest, and it definitely did. He showed me that he was willing to do anything to make sure that I would see the Torah the way he saw it, that it was vibrant and full of life, and it was meaningful. As a teenager, one year I was here for Sukkot, and I was not interested in staying up all night saying Tehillim, or even just pretending to say Tehillim. And I told him that. I was then about 15 years old. He knew I wanted to start learning to drive, and he made a deal with me. If I come to Tehillim and I say every word next to him, he'll teach me that to drive that night. And so it was. We came to Shul. We finished Tehillim about 1:30, and we drove down the street, Milner Gate, to the public school parking lot, and for 2 hours, he taught me how to drive. Now, he had an early morning the next day. Simchas Torah was big, but that didn't make a difference, because he knew how impactful that would be. He taught me how to treat people. In his house, the guests weren't generally the influential people, the famous people in the community. There was the downtrodden people, the forgotten people, and he made sure that they knew that they were not forgotten, that they should not be downtrodden, and that they were something special. And he showed that to them with his time, with his patience. And sometimes they pushed his patience, but nevertheless. See, halacha was his life. A similar story that my uncle Mani mentioned. I heard from my mother and my uncle Yossi that during the sickness, at a point where he was a little delirious, the doctor asked him, "Where are you?" And at first he started to respond with, ayeka, the question of life. Where are you? What are you doing? The nurse was not amused at all until she pushed, and finally he said, South America. Problem was he wasn't kidding. Anyways, my uncle Yossi, with his wisdom, stepped in and said, "Let me see." And he asked him a complicated question in Hilchos Shabbos. And right away, my grandfather was able to respond with the answer. He said, "Right now, I don't have the head to tell you where, but this is the din." And he was correct. He was a person of halacha. But that's not what made him so great. What made him so great is what he did with the halacha. To him, halacha was a way of helping people, a way of helping the community, a way of helping Am Yisrael. At the Shiva, I heard one young woman say that when she was mourning the tragic loss of her father, and she called up my grandfather, the Rav, to ask if she can buy a new coat. And instead of giving her the answer and hanging up the phone, he didn't even respond to the question. He immediately says to her, "How are you doing? How are you holding up?" It wasn't about the information. It was not about the answer to the question. It was about the person asking the question. Or like the time where a young 19-year-old boy many years ago wrote to the Rebbe a list of questions that he had. And the Rebbe said, "Why don't you go ask Rabbi Schochet these questions?" And this young 19-year-old boy spent many nights for a few years with my grandfather asking him these questions. And he said one time he shows up to the house ready to ask all his questions. And my grandfather's running out the door, putting his coat on. He says, "Where are you going?" He says, "You call 911, I'm running." He was running to pull a woman who was ready to take her life. Who was the last phone call she made? To the Rav, because he cared. In addition to that, another thing that was very dear to my grandfather was the continuity of Am Yisrael and the continuity of Torah. He dedicated a large part of his time that could have been his own and free time, to testing Bachram on Smicha, to making sure that the tradition would not be forgotten. Indeed, to many of these people that he tested, he told them, "I'm not giving you Smicha so you can paskin. I'm giving you Smicha so you should know how to have a kosher kitchen and know which questions to ask the rabbi." But like the Gemara tells us in Sanhedrin, that after the Romans sadistically and barbarically quashed the revolt of Bar Kokhba in the 2nd century, they decided that it was time to end the Sanhedrin, was time to end Smicha. So they went after the rabbis. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava realized this, and he grabbed 5, and according to one opinion, 6 students, and he gave them smicha on the spot, and he said, "Run. Go and give smicha to whoever you can, so this tradition is not forgotten." When the enemies heard this, they came looking. The students said, "Rebbe, come with us." He says, "No, you go, I'll stay." He says, "Rebbe, what will be with you?" Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava said, "I will stand here like a stone that cannot be moved in order to protect Am Yisrael." And so it was until the Romans speared him 300 times and turned him into a sieve, as the Gemara says. Saba dedicated his life to making sure that there would be continuity of Limud Torah, and that Torah would become a way of life, but not just a way of life in a scholarly sense, but in a way of life in practice, in the way that we treat each other. And as was quoted before, the pasuk in kehilla, "V'acha yitin alibay." What can we take away? Because ultimately, the greatest good that we can do for the neshama is what we walk away with. And that is, dedicate our lives to Torah. Incorporate Torah to our lives in a way that it becomes part of our daily life. Learn a little bit more. incorporate it a little bit more, and let it become vibrant and real. And the second is the way that we treat people. The way that we approach another person. I remember once in my immaturity, I said to my grandfather, wasn't that a silly question? And I probably said that a couple of times. Or wasn't that a simple question? Why are they even calling you? And my grandfather turned to me and he said, it's not about that. Number one, a person's dignity is more important than any great genius that you have. Number two, if I don't treat the simple question with importance, they'll think that the important question is simple. Through us, which means the children, the grandchildren, and all the spiritual offspring sitting here, it is through us that the Gemara says, Mazar b'chaim afu b'chaim, to keep his memory alive, to keep him with us. It's through these different things that we'll take upon ourselves to improve, that will keep him going, and ultimately, which will bring us to V'hikitzu v'ranenu sheichne yafer, that we'll merit Mashiach and Titchias HaMesim right away. I just want to conclude with Hakar Satayv to my grandmother, who was there for him all the time, every time, and as was mentioned before, not just for my grandfather, but for the entire community. None of this would have been possible without her, and she never complained about it, even though she did want me to become a doctor. I also would like to thank my mother and her siblings and their spouses for the dedication and the care that they gave to my grandfather, especially in the later years. But Oila al Kulana, I want to thank my Uncle Mani for his 24/7 dedication to his father-in-law. No matter what, no matter where, no matter how, he was there, he made sure it happened, he got the job done. Thank you.
At this point, we will show a second video, a short message from Rav Moshe Bogomilsky, a long-time prominent Chabad Rav and halachic authority. He's a chaver of the Rabbani Lubavitch and the Rav of the Beis Rivka Shul, also the author of 10 Sfarim. He's also, of course, a shvager to the Nifter and was very close to him and communicated with him regularly.
Dear bereaved family and friends, I am participating tonight with a twofold reason. Firstly, I am speaking tonight on behalf of esteemed rabbis, worthy Hasidim, Vanshe Maisa, dear bereaved family and friends. I am participating tonight with a twofold reason. Firstly, I am speaking tonight on behalf of the Vaad Harabonim of Lubavitch, of the Central Rabbinic Committee of the United States and Canada, where my brother-in-law, Dovid, was a prominent member of the executive committee. I'm also here on behalf of my wife and my family to participate in the Shloshim gathering in honor of our dear and beloved Reb Dovid, or of his popularly known Rabbi Dovid Schochet. Rabbi Schochet was a highly respected member of the Vaad Harabonim, or should I say the senior member of the Vaad Harabonim, and his opinion were always very well received. We were always impressed with his vast knowledge of halacha, both responsa of old and contemporary halacha. In addition to all this, dealing with Rabbi Schochet on a shaila was a pleasure, because there are many who are well versed in the four halakim of Shulchan Aruch, But he was blessed also with the fifth chelik, common sense, understanding, feeling, and sympathy, which is very important in deciding and dealing with halachic issues. There is an expression that we say to mourners when we come to comfort them, which is universally accepted as the prayer expressed, and that is, Hamokam Yenachem Eschem B'Sher Sharabei Letziyim V'Shalayim. A lot has been said why we start with the word Hamokam. Hamokam means the place, and it refers to Hashem. But it could be said that Hamokam also means the place that the person achieved, his place in the community, his place in the society, his place in his congregation. And when you think about a rabbi in a congregation, many times he achieved a lot, he accomplished a lot, he did a lot, he taught a lot, but it's at the expense of his family. He wasn't able to dedicate to his family as much time as he would like to, and the children don't have their father as much as they would like to, and they all give off of their time for the sake of the community. So if Rabbi Schochet accomplished a lot in Toronto, and indeed he did, it's thanks to his family that gave him away, or gave away their time that they would love to have with him for the benefit of the community. And therefore, I say to the family, be proud, let this be your comfort, to know that the great schusim that your father achieved, thanks to his leading of the community for over 60 years, you are a partner in it, and you help make it possible. And this thought alone will be the greatest comfort to you in your life many, many years ahead. So I say, dwell on your father's accomplishments, be proud of them, and they are all to your credit. And I hope that the community will continue to appreciate the Rebbetzin, my sister-in-law, the Eishes Chaver, who the halacha says Eishes Chaver is kechaver, and hold her in esteem and in respect for the rest of her life. Let's hope and pray that Bila Hamova Tzla Netzach, Umocha Hashem Elokim Dimo Me'al Kaponim. Amen.
Is always stressed with deciding when to be machmer and when to be mekel. As my shver always told me, you must know the shoyel, the one asking, before answering a shaila. But there was another very important aspect, namely his cook, his vision, was always attuned to halacha. Lately, in a story already told, one day he asked my shvager Yossi and I whether we felt he required his heparin shot. We told him that while he was taking another blood thinner, he should definitely be asking the physician when he came on Friday. Next day, the doctor told him that although it wasn't essential, he should still be taking it. On Shabbos, when the nurse came, he told her, I pass. Please continue giving it to me tomorrow, but not today. As you are Jewish and injecting a patient is a shaila on Shabbos, therefore, please do not give me the injection. After we got over the shock, when my shvager and I told the shver certain potential heterim and began to discuss the issue with him, he told us very matter-of-factly, all my life people have been calling me for leniencies. Do you actually think I don't know the heterim? But this is not the time for that. Realizing that the nurse was hurt by his comments, he turned to her and said, do you realize the compliment I just gave you? I've been studying Torah for 80 years. I'm a rabbi of a large community, have a long white beard. But you are as Jewish as I am. And just like I can't give an injection, neither can you on our holy Sabbath. She was on cloud 9 when she walked out of the room. I told my wife later, he explained to me that 3 weeks prior, when he took the same injection, he noticed that some blood came out, causing this shaila. I said to her, when we saw blood, we were worried about the damage it could cause him. When he saw blood, he saw shaila and Hilchos Shabbos. That was the difference of being a person with a halachic vision. Next speaker, learned with the Shver for the last 25 years, is the Chashva Rav Chabad and Markim. It gives me an honor to call on Rabbi Avram Plotkin.
There's only one page. And most of on this page is already said, so we'll keep it brief and taka brief. As was mentioned before, I had the schus of learning with Rabbi Schochet for close to 25 years. Every morning I was there, 9 to 10. That was my special time with him. And I know it's 25 years because I remember we were sitting there together when 9/11 happened. So we were there learning and we just heard the news. So that's a few years ago. But in the course of that time, it's a gast for a while, zet for a mile. I was able to see certain things. I know him very well from 9 to 10 in the morning. I don't know the rest of the day, but I know in that window. So I'm going to share with you some things that happened when I was there. When I was there, officially I was supposed to learn with him, but the phone never stopped. And he never did not answer a phone call. He always, every phone call, he felt it was important that he answered it. So even though that was my little hour that I had to learn with him, but he answered every single call. And he would have a variety of shilas from the biggest rabbanim in the city, around the world, to some lady that just lost, the little spoon fell into the soup, whatever the question would be. And he engaged in each one of those questions, 1,000%, and he gave them an answer always on the spot. Even the most difficult questions that came from big rabbanim, he had something about, he was able to answer a question like that. I've never seen anything like that in my life. Most of the rabbanim, they say, okay, I'll get back to you. I'll look it up. He was able to answer whatever it was right on the spot. So I asked him once, how do you answer these things so quickly? Like, they're difficult questions. And you just, besides the fact that he was a big guy, so he knew, he said, you learned a story with the Noda Yehuda, that you have a Rav has siyata d'shmaya. And when you're a Rav and you answer a question, the right thing comes to your head at the time, and that's the answer. And numerous times after he gave the answer, he would like double doubt himself. And every time we take out some svarim and look it up, and I tell you, every time he was right. Even if I questioned him and I said, maybe this is like this or like that, every time we looked it up, and he said, that's the siyata d'shmaya of a Rav. You know, if you say it, and you're being asked a shaila, and you say the answer comes. And he had I've never seen, I've spoken to a lot of people learning over the years. I think he had the most unique goiness I ever saw. Someone that was able to compare different parts of Torah to each other in a way that nobody else is able to do. I don't see, there's a lot of people that are big amkonim, they're able to go very deep on the spot and understand things on the spot. He was like a combination of Oika Harim and Sinai, all in one. He was able to find something in a far-flung thing. And he always had that source on the spot that he was able to compare it to. And like I was saying, it's something unusual and something really absolute brilliance that I haven't seen with anybody else ever. And I'm sure in the olden generation they had people like that, but I'm just saying from people that I had a kesher with, something totally, and he always had some sefer that he knew about, besides the fact that he had his Bar Ilan and the Eitzra Chochma. You know, I asked him a question, the next day I'd have a stack of papers, like I don't know how long, of tshuvas associated with that. I don't know if Rabbi Grossbaum was so happy with that, because he used to print out from the printer at Chabad gate over there, like he'd print out like 1,000 pages, 1,000 tshuvas, and he'd give me, here's the answer, and to give you everything. And he was always the first one to have the latest Bar Ilan. You know, like today you have people that are the latest of something. People have the latest. He had to have the latest. He had like version 22.5.3. He was the first one. He said, "You heard it came out already." I said, "What do you need another Bar Ilan? What do you need another Eitzra Chachma?" He says, "What? There's another 3 svarim that are in there." And he stayed up the whole night to read all those svarim. And he used to say a whole night. He used to. Oh, you knew svarim. Well, I remember one time at the very, very beginning, when after the Rebbe passed away, and there was some Lubavitcher saying that the Rebbe once said that big tzaddikim might come back before Tchias HaMesim. And he was questioned that in public at a Vaad Rabbanim meeting. And they said, you know, who could say something like that? The tzaddikim are going to come back before Tchias HaMesim. So he just nonchalantly said, next to the last Kovetz Shiurim from Rabbi Ganzburg, so you'll give a look over there. There's a whole thing about mitzvahs, betelis, la'asad loving, 2 explanations that he gives on it. And he says, L'may nafkamina, the nafkamina is about those that will rise before Tchias HaMesim. So like he pulled this thing out of the hat that nobody else in the world knows about. And once they saw Kovetz Shiurim, right away, the guy said, okay, Rabbi, you're right. Many years ago, he even sent to the Rebbe. He showed me, he had in his drawer, he had from Shimon Shkop, a paper that the Rebbe spoke a whole sikha about, and then he showed it to the Rebbe that Shimon Shkop says a very endlich thing. And the Rebbe said, thank you very much for it. This is really, really very special that I got it. And he used to keep that Shimon Shkop, you remember? He had it in his drawer. And he had tshuvas with Rav Moshe Feinstein, with everybody, with all the Gedol of the previous generation, all the poskim, and whenever he came to New York, you know, shluchim from all over the world used to call Rabbi Schochet for his opinion, and they used to try to find out what do we do in this case, what in that case, because shluchim have a lot of questions, a lot of shilas, and he set the tone for shluchim around the world. In other words, when people would say, where do you know this from? How can you say something like this? They'd say, Rabbi Schochet said that. And once you said Rabbi Schochet said that, that's the end of the conversation. That's what it was. And he came up with very, very original things in kashrus and shlichus, in many, many areas, self-cleaning ovens, all kinds of concepts that he came up with, that became the gold standard of what shluchim do around the world. And it's because Rabbi Schochet said so. So this is something that's exceptionally unusual. And every morning when I learned with him, many times I was busy in my shlichus and I didn't come, so he'd call me up, and he'd always sing the same song. He'd say, "Nirpim atem, nirpim." He says, "You're lazy. Wake up, come and learn." He used to force me to come and learn. I have to give him credit. He encouraged me to get involved a little bit with Rabbanis and to go into Dayanis. I learned with him Dayanis over the years, and he encouraged me to go and join Tehillim and things like that. It was only because he pushed me. Otherwise, I would never have done it. I have a full schedule all day long in my shlichus, but he kept on pushing me to get involved in it, and that's why over the years, in his chus that I've done all of that. But, you know, anyways, just have to thank Rabbi Schochet and the Rebbetzin also. The house was always a house filled with achnosas orchim. I remember how the Rebbetzin used to come and bring him his coffee every morning over there with his pieces of cheese and his pills, and she would bring it to him. And I was there, so every time she used to always bring me a coffee as well. So I have to thank the Rebbetzin the house was a very, very special house. And I just want to say that I'm just going to conclude with the story that was told in Rabbi Shochet's name. Everybody knows it. It's online. You can look at it constantly. You can see it. It's been shown again and again. The story when Rabbi Schochet went to Buffalo, the Rebbe sent him to the Buffalo. Probably most of you know the story, with the story with the miser of Krakow. And it's a long story. I'm not going to bother you with the story now, but basically his zayda was the Tosfos Yontif. Rabbi Yoseph Lipman Heller, what's his name? Huh? Yontif Heller, yeah, Yontif, yeah. So the Tosfos Yontif, there was a fellow in his town that people thought he was a miser. And I just want to tell you, before I say this story, that Rabbi Schochet was a very, very generous guy. Every morning there were people coming to his place and constantly coming to him for loans, and he gave out loans to people all over the place. The family will probably have to find out where the loans are now, but but he always gave out, he always helped people wherever he can, and really he says, that's my joy in life, is to be able to do Gemilas Chasadim. So one time, I remember he told this story, and the story is of this miser in Krakow, that when he passed away, everybody thought he was a miser. So the day, a few weeks after he passed away, the butcher came to him and said, hey guys, I have to close down, he says to the Rav. The Rav says, why? Tosfos Yontif asks, why? He says, I'm closing down because this miser over there, he used to give me for all the poor people in the city. He would pay all their bills. And without this miser, I wouldn't be able to survive. And then the butcher came the next day, and the baker came the next day. Oh, everyone had the same story. Everybody was close, because this person that everyone thought was the miser was really not a miser. He really, behind the scenes, he gave beyond and beyond. I just want to say that sometimes you have the same thing with a Rav also. Many people ask the question, what does a Rav do? What does a Rav do? A Rav, if you were in this room, you'd see he's working a whole day. He's helping the community. He's dedicated to every single yid. But what does a Rav do? That's what people ask. But then, when a Rav passes away, suddenly the yid that's going through a challenging moment, going through in her family, she's having complications with her marriage, and this one has a shaila in halacha. This one has a shaila in gerus. This one has a shaila what to do. This one needs a heter. This one has something to ask about a transplant, about last minute in life questions which he was asked every 5 minutes. People asked him what to do, whether you can pull the plug, you can't pull the plug. Everyone thinks, what does a Rav do? But the day after a Rav passes away, a Rav like Rabbi Schochet, but it's chaval da'avdin al v'lo yishtachshin. It's like the shtat doesn't know what to do. The Vaad Rabbanim doesn't know what to do. All the big Rabbanim in the city, I know for a fact, when they wanted to know or had a real shayla, they would call up Rabbi Schochet to find out what it is, and then they would say, okay, so now it makes sense. But this is the kind of person that he was. Like if Vayetze Yaakov Beishav, the Hoyd, the Oyer, everything's gone, and but we say Zara b'chaim, Afu b'chaim. So Mitzvah Shem, Zayin, may his neshama continue to live on and continue to shine to each and every one of us, and the Mitzvah Shem. Just like we just heard him before from the movie, I just heard him speaking over there. It almost felt like he was right here. Continue to listen to his voice and to listen to his message, and we should merit the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu, and we may come together with all the great tzaddikim, with the Rebbe together. Amen.
Before I call the final speaker, I just want to say a few thank yous, a few organizations, and a few individuals. Ub'klall in Toronto, Hatzalah Toronto Thornhill, Hatzalah Crown Heights, the accommodations in New York, Friendship House, Ben Yishuv and Achiv, Tzaddik of a doctor, Dr. Mandy Leventhal, two tzaddikim in New York, Michael Zalewski and Jesse Smith, Shelley Botnick of Echo. We're so fortunate to have her here in town. Chabad Lubavitch and Bikur Cholim Satman Square. There were some individuals who also helped. Chanoch Nelken, Ephraim Mayberg, Boris Hakan, and Yisrael Dovid. I'm not going to say your last name because you're actually part of Hatzalah, but we're tremendously grateful for all you did. Rabbi Ganzburg and all those from Kehillas Chabad Lubavitch who assisted in organizing tonight's event. And of course, prior, Ach and Chaviv, our dear friend Shua Mayrobitz, who was an amazing assistance to the family. Although my wife's siblings and their spouses were, of course, all very involved, since I'm the one speaking, it's unfair not to mention them, as Yossi, Batya, and Chana and families were continuously involved in the care in a very, very meaningful manner. We've been speaking about my shver, but I must speak for a minute about my mother-in-law, the Rebbetzin, who taught us all an extremely important life lesson on how to be the Akeres Habayis and a devoted spouse. We saw her in New York sitting for 12 hours per day for months without moving and forcing my shver to eat, which, believe me, wasn't easy, and it drove us to do more and more. We saw her insist that he stay at home in Toronto with her without help, again, pushing us to do more and more, an amazing lesson for all of us. Finally, I must thank my wife. Normally we say by a wife, but here it was much more than just being my wife in the normal level of gratitude, for I can say without dispute that in actuality, she was the central figure in his care. She extended his life by a full year and more with help, but directing the situation. While still doing her job, she put the rest of her life on hold for 14 months to do everything that needed to be done. I can only say to you that b'schus all you've done, may you also see Yiddish nachas, only Yiddish nachas from all of your progeny, a bracha that we often receive from the shver. At this time, it gives me a great kavod to call my esteemed shwager, well-known Talmid Chacham, who was actually Isaac on Lubavitcher Rebbe's Sichas for years, and who resides in Pomona, New York. It's my honor to call on Harav Zalman Weisberg.
The hour is late, and I have a very long speech. I'm going to put it on YouTube, and whoever wants to listen could listen. I just want to say, there's a lot to say about my shver, a lot you heard, and we could speak for hours. I just want to say something only two people in the world could talk about, and that's me and my dear brother-in-law Mani. Because now that I'm Zichro to be a father-in-law, I have three wonderful ladies. I don't know about others who have son-in-laws, but I find it's not the easiest relationship to navigate. You care about them, and you want them to succeed, and you want them to succeed with their children, but you don't interfere. And I lived here in Toronto for 25 years, just 2 minutes away from my father-in-law. And just in retrospect, just looking back, I realized that how he went out of his way so much never ever to criticize, never to interfere, just to lift me up. Every time is, what were you mechadish, not what was I mechadish. And I could tell everybody here that since my shver was nifter, I learned more about him than I learned in the 25 years living with him in close proximity. And the reason is because he never spoke about himself. Like, I can't imagine, I mean, I don't know about you, but if I saved someone's marriage, everybody would know about it. I wouldn't say the names, but I would tell everybody I know, you know what, there was a couple about to break up, and Baruch Hashem, if I saved someone's life, they were about to commit suicide, and I convinced them to live, everybody would hear about it. If I got a call from Rabbi Yashiv's Bezdin, believe me, everybody would know that Issa Zalman got a call from Rabbi Yashiv's Bezdin. My shver never spoke about himself. I'm just thinking, I never realized, B'shas Maaseh, how much he has to do with so many people. How many people he was mechazik, how many marriages he saved, how many people he lifted them up. People are telling me now, I'm getting messages and calls and WhatsApps. Yishver saved my community, Yishver saved my marriage, Yishver saved my life. I never knew these things because he never spoke about it. How do you live with a guy for 25 years and he doesn't say a word about himself? That's all he has to say is about you. What were you machadish, Mr. Solomon? I just feel foolish that I didn't take advantage of him when he was alive. And the only thing I could tell everybody here is about chayit el liboy. You all have parents, you all have in-laws, you have loved ones, you have spouses. Take advantage of them while they're still alive. My shviga Tzulang Yoren and my shver taught me what it means to be in-laws who are always there for you, but never interfere, never put you down. Mind their own business, but when you need anything, they'll stop everything to help you. In every way they can. My shviga Tzulang Yoren should have the koyach to continue until she's reunited with her husband. We should all be zeichet to be as Mashiach Tzidkenu.
Whoever didn't daven Mariv, if we have a minyan, we will daven now. Do we have a minyan?
Hi, good evening. My name is Akiva Walter, and on behalf of the family and Chabad Lubavitch in the city of Toronto, I wanted to thank you all for joining on Zoom tonight. If you'd like to send a message to the family, you can certainly do so. If you can rename your name, if you came in under iPhone, please rename your name to a real name so that the family can see who came in and as well as at your town. Thank you very much. We should be of simchas and the car.